This is inspired by a conversation I had the other day, but I think it's worth sharing because someone might need to hear it. I think people, especially when they're struggling, spend a lot of time trying to figure out the why of things, right? Why is this happening? Why do I keep doing this? And that's not random. There's something inside us that inherently knows that if we can get to the why, we can unlock something. I used to work in behavior therapy, and we were always looking for the why in order to get to the how of changing the behavior. And the why can show up in a lot of ways. For example, I might say, I am hyper aware of people's emotions. Why? Well, my parents fought a lot when I was a kid, and I was constantly scanning the room to make sure it was safe. Now, that could sound like blame, but also it's pattern recognition. As kids, we learn to adapt in order to stay safe. If emotions were unpredictable, you learn to read a room. If love felt conditional, you learn to work hard to earn it. If emotions felt explosive, you learn to manage people before they escalate. And back then, that wasn't dysfunction, that was intelligence. But the problem is, what protected you in that environment can start controlling you in another one. As an adult, that same awareness might show up as anxiety. That adaptability could turn into people pleasing. That protection might now be control or defensiveness or avoidance. And if you don't understand where it came from, you might not be able to see it as a learned behavior. More often, you're going to see it as who you are. And if we don't learn to follow it back to the cave, to find that spark of where it came from, then we're going to internalize that as identity. And trying to change identity is a lot different than trying to change a behavior. One feels impossible, one feels workable. That's a big shift. And it takes you from this is who I am to this is what I learned to survive. A lot of what we call personality is just well-practiced protection. And anything learned can be unlearned. And I'm passionate about this from a child who witnessed this type of thing and created my own trauma responses, as well as a parent who gave my children this to witness and create their own trauma responses from. Because we have to be intentional and see it less as blame and more as awareness. I think of it like this. Imagine my daughter is on a stage and all of the people in the audience are potential people that contributed to who she would become. Now I might say, blue eyes. Who gave her these blue eyes? And her grandparents might raise their hand because they're responsible for the blue eyes she has. And I might say, stubbornness. Who is responsible for her being so stubborn? And I might raise my hand because that's probably me. And then I might say, who's responsible for her nervous system responses that show up in relationships? How she handles herself when she's overwhelmed? Who's responsible for that? And her dad and I should stand up. Because owning that doesn't change her responsibility for her life, but it does clarify my responsibility. Because if I don't, do you know what my next question is going to be? Avoiding responsibility? Who has that one? Because that's still a learned behavior. And as parents, our accountability does not stop at eye color. And not just owning it, but being part of the unraveling process. So we don't stay stuck in patterns with unwanted consequences. Because sometimes it does hurt uncovering the whys, but it's about what shaped you and what you're going to decide continues to shape you. You can't rewrite a pattern you don't recognize. And healing doesn't just ask something of the child. It asks everyone to dig deep and face the impacts, even when and especially when they're uncomfortable. Because silence is easier, but accountability builds repair.